The white dress hung on the closet door like a ghost of an unfulfilled dream. In 3 days, I was supposed to become Igor's wife. In 3 days, my new life was supposed to begin. Instead, I stood in the doorway of his apartment, holding the keys he'd given me last week with the words, "You can come any time, darling. This is your home now, too." Come any time. Apparently, he hadn't considered that any time might be right now, at 2 o'clock on a Wednesday afternoon when he should be at work and his secretary Alina should be at her desk, not in his bed. But judging by the sounds coming from the bedroom, they'd both found more interesting occupations. My hand froze on the door handle. My heart pounded loudly. I was afraid they'd hear it. Part of me wanted to turn around and leave, pretend nothing had happened, that I'd seen and heard nothing. Isn't that what smart women do? Save face, save the relationship, preserve the illusion? The other part, the one that designed buildings, calculated loads, and always knew when its structure was about to collapse, that part understood. The foundation of my relationship had cracked long ago. I just refused to see it. I pushed the door open. They didn't even hear me. Igor lay on his back, Alina sitting on top of him. Her red hair, the same hair he'd called vulgar when I'd shown him her photo in the corporate album, spilled across his chest. "Igor." My voice sounded surprisingly calm, as if I was asking whether he wanted coffee. They froze. Alina squeaked and rolled off him, grabbing the sheet. Igor jumped up, his face running through a gamut of emotions from shock to panic, finally settling on that condescending mask he wore when he thought he was right. "Anna, this isn't what you think." I almost laughed. Had he really just said that? The exact phrase every caught cheater says in every bad movie? "No." I leaned against the door frame, crossing my arms. "What do I think, Igor?" He pulled on his pants, not taking his eyes off me, as if I were a wild cat ready to pounce. If only he knew how tired I was. Tired of pretending not to notice his late returns, urgent business trips, messages he deleted the moment he read them. "Listen, let's talk calmly," he began, approaching me with outstretched hands. "This is just physiology. You understand. With the wedding stress, Stop." I raised my hand. "Are you seriously trying to blame this on wedding stress from our wedding?" Alina sobbed quietly, wrapped in the sheet. I looked at her, a girl about 25, with smudged mascara and frightened eyes. "How long?" I asked, although it no longer mattered. Silence. "How long, Igor?" "6 months." Alina exhaled before he could answer. "I'm so sorry. He said you were going to break up, that the wedding was a mistake, but he didn't know how to tell you." "Shut up, Alina," he barked, and for the first time I saw the real him, not the charming, successful lawyer, not the attentive fiancé who remembered how I liked my cappuccino, but a man capable of using people and discarding them when they became inconvenient. 6 months. Half a year he led me by the nose. Half a year I'd chosen a dress, ordered catering, sent invitations, while he was screwing his secretary. "You know what?" I turned toward the door. "Consider this me doing you a favor. Now you don't need to find the words." "Anna, wait!" He grabbed my hand. "Don't be a child. We can work this out. It doesn't mean anything." I looked at his fingers on my wrist, then into his eyes. "If it doesn't mean anything, then we don't mean anything either. The wedding is canceled. The guests will be disappointed, but I think they'll survive, unlike our marriage, which definitely wouldn't have. You'll regret this." His voice turned cold. "You're 32, Anna. Not many men will want a woman your age with your obsession with work. I forgave you all those blueprints at night, endless projects. Forgave me? I slowly turned around. You forgave me my work? The work that paid for half the expenses of this ridiculous wedding? He was silent. In his silence, I read everything. He really thought that. Believed he was doing me a favor by agreeing to marry a 32-year-old career woman. Goodbye, Igor. I placed the keys on the hallway table. Send me the bill for the dress. I'll pay you back. Walking out of the apartment, I leaned against the wall of the entrance and took a deep breath. My hands were shaking, my legs too. But inside, beneath the deafening pain and humiliation, something else was growing. Relief. My phone vibrated. A message from Vera Nikolaevna, my client from Seaside, a small town on the Baltic coast. Anna, we're ready to start the lighthouse project. When can you come? We're waiting for you. I looked at the message, then at Igor's apartment door behind me, then back to the screen. A lighthouse, the sea, 300 kilometers from Moscow and this nightmare. My fingers moved across the screen on their own. Can leave tomorrow morning, will be there by evening. The drive to Seaside took 6 hours. 6 hours I tried not to think about the white dress left in my apartment, about the 200 invited guests who now needed to be told why there would be no wedding, about how my mother would react to the news. Somewhere after the 3rd hour on the road, I stopped crying and turned the music up louder. Seaside greeted me with the smell of the sea and the cries of gulls. The town was tiny, one main street, several side streets, old wooden houses with faded shutters and brand new cottages of wealthy summer residents. On the horizon, on a high cliff, rose the lighthouse, a red and white striped tower, the reason I'd come here. The Seagull Inn turned out to be a 2-story house with blue trim, 50 meters from the shore. On the porch, I was met by Vera Nikolaevna, a woman about 60 with gray hair pulled into a bun and perceptive brown eyes. "Anna, dear!" She hugged me as tightly as if we were relatives. "Finally! Come in, come in. I prepared the best room for you with a sea view." "Thank you, Vera Nikolaevna." I tried to smile, but it came out crooked. She looked at me carefully, and I realized my red eyes and face, gaunt after 24 hours, couldn't be hidden by foundation. "Tea or something stronger?" she asked simply. "Tea, please." We sat on the veranda, drinking strong black tea with raspberry jam, and I watched the sea. It was gray and restless, waves breaking against the rocks with an angry hiss. Somehow this was calming. "A man?" she asked, not looking at me, pouring tea into cups. "Uh-huh." "Cheated?" "Uh-huh." "Right before the wedding?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. "Bastard," she stated. "Well, good that you found out now and not after 5 years and 2 children." It was so practical and sensible that I unexpectedly laughed, for the first time in 24 hours. "You're right." "Of course I'm right. I've been married 3 times, so I understand something about men." She sipped her tea. "The sea heals, dear. And work, too. And we have a month's worth of work here, if not more. Just enough time for you to recover." The next morning, we drove to the lighthouse. Vera Nikolaevna drove her old Moskvich along the bumpy road leading uphill and told the story. The lighthouse was built in 1898. It saved hundreds of ships over the years. During the war, they tried to blow it up, but didn't manage. My grandfather was the keeper here. Then my father, then... She paused for a second. Then they closed it, said it wasn't needed anymore. GPS, you see, automation. But you want to restore it. Not me, Maxim, my nephew. He bought the lighthouse 3 years ago, invested all his money. He wants to make a maritime museum downstairs and upstairs keep a working lighthouse. Tourists will like it. Sounds ambitious. Maxime has always been ambitious. Though after what happened with Dennis, he changed. I wanted to ask who Dennis was, but we'd arrived at the lighthouse and the question flew out of my head. Up close, the tower looked even more impressive. About 30 meters high, it towered over the cliff, surrounded by ruins of old outbuildings. The paint was peeling, rust visible in places, but overall, the condition wasn't bad. My hands itched. I could already see how this could look after reconstruction. Next to the entrance door stood a man. Tall, broad-shouldered, in worn jeans and a dark blue flannel shirt. Dark hair with gray streaks, stubble, deep lines around his eyes from the sun or from grief, I couldn't tell. Maxim, this is Anna, the architect from Moscow. He looked at me and I involuntarily stepped back. His eyes were the color of a stormy sea, gray-green, cold. From Moscow, he repeated, and in those 2 words there was so much contempt that I felt myself blush. Yes, from Moscow. Problem? I raised my chin. No, no problem. He crossed his arms across his chest. It's just that all the Moscow architects I've worked with wanted to demolish half the structures and build something modern. I hope you're not one of those. I'm one of those who does her work professionally, I said through clenched teeth, and I don't demolish anything until I understand what can be preserved. Unlike provincial amateurs who think whitewash and red paint will solve all problems. Vera Nikolaevna gasped. Maxim narrowed his eyes. Provincial amateurs? You're not an architect, right? I asked, putting on a sweet smile. So yes, an amateur. We stood, drilling each other with our eyes like 2 fighters in a ring. Somewhere in the back of my consciousness, the voice of reason screamed, Anna, this is your client, the customer. Be professional. But after yesterday, I had no strength left to pretend to be nice and agreeable. Excellent, Maxim finally said. Then show me what a professional Moscow architect can do. He flung open the lighthouse door and I walked inside. The next 2 hours I spent examining the building from top to bottom. Maxim followed me silently, occasionally commenting on something. Despite our conflicted start, I had to admit, he knew the lighthouse inside and out, every stone, every beam. This wall, he ran his hand along the brick masonry, is original, 1898. My great-grandfather helped lay it. It's in good condition. I tapped the bricks with my knuckles. We can preserve it. He nodded, and something like approval flickered in his eyes. The circular staircase wound upward in a tight spiral, iron railings worn smooth by countless hands over more than a century. Some steps creaked ominously under our weight. These need reinforcement, I said, making notes in my tablet. The metal is corroding. We'll need to replace at least a third of them, maybe more. Can we match the original design? Yes, I know a metalworker in Moscow who specializes in historical restoration. He can replicate the pattern exactly. I looked up at him. It won't be cheap. I didn't expect cheap. Maxim's jaw tightened. I expected it done right. We climbed higher. The lighthouse interior was dim, lit only by narrow windows cut into the thick stone walls. The air smelled of salt, rust, and time. Something about it felt sacred, like walking through a cathedral. How many ships did it save? I asked quietly. Hundreds, maybe thousands over the years. He stopped on a landing, looking out through one of the small windows at the gray expanse of sea. My grandfather kept a log. Every ship that passed, every storm, every rescue, 3 generations of records. Do you still have them? In my house, boxes full. I was thinking they could be part of the museum exhibit, show people what lighthouse keepers actually did. It wasn't romantic, it was hard, dangerous work, but it mattered. It still matters, I said. You're keeping that tradition alive. Something shifted in his expression. The ice in his eyes thawed just a little. You really get it, don't you? He said softly. This isn't just a building to you. Buildings are never just buildings. They're memories, stories, pieces of people's lives. When I restore something, I'm not just fixing bricks and mortar. I'm preserving someone's love, someone's sacrifice, someone's purpose. We stood there in the dim stairwell, and the silence between us wasn't uncomfortable anymore. It was charged with something else. Understanding, maybe. Recognition. Come on, Maxim said finally. You need to see the lantern room. We climbed the final flight of stairs and emerged into the top chamber. It took my breath away. The room was circular, maybe 5 meters in diameter, surrounded by tall windows that offered a 360-degree view of the sea and coastline. The glass was dirty, covered in salt spray and years of neglect. But even through the grime, the view was spectacular. Gray waves stretched to the horizon, white foam churning against black rocks below. In the distance, a fishing boat bobbed on the swells. In the center of the room stood the lighthouse lens, a magnificent Fresnel lens, its prisms dusty but intact. It sat silent and dark, a mechanical heart that had stopped beating. It's beautiful, I breathed, approaching the lens carefully. It's haven't worked in 15 years, Maxim said, coming to stand beside me. But mechanically, it's sound. We just need to restore the electrical system, clean the lens, make sure the rotation mechanism works. And it will shine again. I looked at him. That's what you want, isn't it? Not just a static display, but a real working lighthouse. Yes. His voice was fierce with determination. This is a lighthouse. It should do what lighthouses do, guide people home, warn them of danger, be a beacon in the dark. I understood then. This wasn't about tourism or museums or even family legacy. This was about redemption, about creating something that could save others, since he couldn't save Dennis. We'll make it work, I said firmly. I promise. This lighthouse will shine again. He turned to face me fully, and for the first time since we'd met, he really looked at me. Not as an annoying Moscow architect or an obstacle to his vision, but as a person, an ally. Why did you run away from your wedding? He asked abruptly. The question caught me off guard. I could have deflected, made a joke, changed the subject. But something about this place, this silent tower suspended between sea and sky, demanded honesty. I caught my fiancé in bed with his secretary 3 days before the wedding. 6-month affair, apparently. I was the last to know. Maxim's face darkened. Bastard. That's what Vera said too. I managed a weak smile. I should have seen it coming. The signs were all there. Late nights, phone calls, he'd taken another room. Weekends, he was suddenly too busy to spend with me. But I was so focused on the wedding, on making everything perfect, that I ignored what was right in front of me. That's not your fault. He's the one who... I know. Intellectually, I know that. But it still feels like I failed somehow, like if I'd been more something, more attentive, more exciting, more whatever it was he needed. Stop. Maxim's voice was sharp. Don't do that to yourself. I've seen that spiral, blaming yourself for someone else's choices. It's poison. You're talking about Dennis. He flinched slightly at the name, but didn't look away. I was the captain. He was my responsibility. I made the decision that led us into that storm. His hands clenched into fists. For 3 years, I've replayed that day. Every choice, every weather report, every goddamn wave, wondering what I could have done differently. And building this lighthouse is your penance? Something like that. He turned back to the windows, to the sea that had taken his brother. If I can make this work, if I can save even one ship, one life, maybe it will balance the scales somehow. That's not how it works, I said gently. You can't trade one life for another. You can't earn your way out of grief. I know. His voice was barely audible, but I have to try. We stood there in silence, two wounded people in a broken lighthouse, both trying to rebuild something. The building, ourselves, maybe both. We should go, Maxim said finally. It's getting dark and the path down is tricky. As we descended, the light fading to purple twilight, Maxim suddenly stopped. Are you hungry? My stomach answered with an embarrassingly loud growl, and we both laughed. Real, genuine laughter that echoed in the stone stairwell. I'll take that as a yes, he said. There's a place in town. Nothing fancy, but the food is good. Sounds perfect. We drove back to Seaside in his battered Land Rover, the radio playing soft rock, neither of us talking much, but the silence was comfortable now, companionable. The cafe was called At the Wharf, a small wooden building on the waterfront with checkered tablecloths and the smell of fried fish. Behind the counter stood a bear of a man, maybe 40 years old, with a kind face and a booming laugh. Max, he roared when he saw us. What brings you here? And not alone. You brought a woman. Oleg, this is Anna, the architect. Maxim introduced me, and I noticed a slight flush creeping up his neck. Ah, the architect. Oleg gave me a meaningful wink. I heard about you. They say you almost killed Max with the look on the first day. I tried, but he turned out to be resilient, I shot back, and Oleg burst out laughing. I like her. Sit, I'll bring you something special. We took a table by the window overlooking the sea. Evening tide was rolling in, waves lapping against the wooden pier, seagulls circling overhead in the fading light. Oleg is my best friend, Maxim said, watching the waves. We sailed together for years. When everything happened, he quit the sea too, opened this cafe. Because of you? Because of me. Though he says he always wanted to settle on shore, start a family, but I know the truth. Then he's a real friend. Yes, there aren't many like him. Oleg brought out bowls of fish soup and we fell silent, savoring the food. He was right. It was divine. Rich broth, chunks of fresh fish, potatoes and herbs. Vera told me about Dennis, I said quietly. I'm so sorry. Maxim's spoon stopped halfway to his mouth. She shouldn't have. Maybe not, but I'm glad I know. Now I understand why the lighthouse means so much to you. He slowly lowered the spoon. We got caught in a storm. I misjudged the situation, took the ship on the wrong course. Dennis was on the deck when the wave... He stopped. He was 21. He wanted to be a captain, like me. It wasn't your fault. I reached my hand across the table, but didn't quite touch him. Just left my palm there, near his. An invitation. I was the captain. Everything that happens on a ship is my fault. But his hand moved, fingers brushing against mine. But thank you for saying it. We sat like that, connected by the lightest touch. The next 2 weeks fell into a rhythm. Every morning I'd wake to the sound of waves and seagulls, have breakfast with Vera, who somehow always knew exactly what I needed to hear, then drive up to the lighthouse, where Maxim would be waiting with coffee and a new challenge. The foundation on the east side is more damaged than I thought, I told him one morning, crouching by the base of the tower with my tablet showing the structural scans. We need to excavate and reinforce before we can do anything else. Maxim knelt beside me, so close I could smell the sea salt and cedar scent of him. How long will that take? 2 weeks, maybe 3, and it'll add about 30,000 to the budget. He was quiet for a moment, jaw working. I knew money was tight. He'd sunk everything into buying the lighthouse and the preliminary work. Do it, he said finally. I'd rather spend the money now than watch it collapse in 5 years. Smart man. I smiled at him and he returned it, that rare, full smile that made my stomach flip. Smart architect, he countered. We developed an easy banter, the initial hostility melting into something warmer, more playful, but underneath it ran a current of something else, awareness. Every accidental touch, every shared look that lasted a beat too long, every moment we found ourselves standing just a little closer than necessary. I told myself it was too soon. I'd just escaped one disaster, I didn't need to walk into another. But my heart wasn't listening to my head. Anna! Vera's voice called from the pathway. She was climbing up with a picnic basket, slightly out of breath. I brought lunch. You two need to eat. You're a lifesaver, I said, helping her spread a blanket on a flat patch of grass with a view of the sea. Someone has to take care of you. Left to yourselves, you'd both starve, buried in your blueprints and beams. She unpacked sandwiches, fresh tomatoes, cheese, and a thermos of hot soup. Maxim, did you tell Anna about the town festival next week? What festival? I asked, biting into a sandwich. The Sea Festival. It's been a tradition here for over 100 years. Boats, music, dancing, too much vodka. The whole town celebrates. You should come, Vera said, looking between us with barely concealed hope. Both of you. I don't know, I started. Anna doesn't have to go if she doesn't want to, Maxim said quickly, and something in his voice made me look at him sharply. Was that disappointment? Actually, it sounds nice. I'd love to see it. The smile that spread across his face made my decision worth it. After Vera left, we worked through the afternoon, measuring, photographing, discussing options. The sun was setting when Maxim suddenly said, "Want to see something?" Always mysterious, I teased, but followed him up the spiral stairs to the lantern room. The sunset painted the sea in shades of gold and crimson. Maxim opened one of the windows, newly oiled hinges turning smoothly, and the sound of waves rushed in, along with the salt-sweet smell of evening tide. When I was a kid, my grandfather would bring me up here. He'd tell me stories about the ships he'd guided, the storms he'd weathered. He said being a lighthouse keeper was the most important job in the world because you were responsible for bringing people home safely. He was right. After Dennis died, I couldn't go back to sea. Every wave felt like an enemy, every storm a trap. But I remembered what my grandfather said about bringing people home, and I thought, maybe I can't be at sea anymore, but I can do this. I can be the lighthouse. I moved to stand beside him, our shoulders nearly touching. You're not just rebuilding a building, I said softly. You're rebuilding yourself. He turned to look at me, and the intensity in his eyes made my breath catch. What are you rebuilding, Anna? My ability to trust, I think, to believe that not everyone will betray me, that I'm worth more than I settled for. Igor made me feel like I should be grateful he wanted to marry me. Like my career, my ambitions, my age, they were all strikes against me, and he was generous to overlook them. He was an idiot. Maxim's voice was fierce.
You're brilliant, passionate, strong. Any man would be lucky to... He stopped abruptly, looked away. To what? My heart was pounding. To have you in his life, he finished quietly. The air between us felt charged, electric. I could feel the heat of him, could see the pulse jumping in his throat. If I just leaned in a little, moved a few inches closer, his phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He pulled it out, frowned at the screen. It's the contractor. I need to take this. He stepped away, voice switching to business mode. Yes. Tomorrow? That's earlier than we discussed. I took a shaky breath, pressing my hand to my racing heart. What was I doing? This was my client, my fresh start. I couldn't complicate this with feelings, with chemistry, with whatever this thing was growing between us. But God, I wanted to. The Sea Festival transformed Seaside. Colorful banners hung from every building, boats decorated with flowers filled the harbor, and the smell of grilled fish and fresh pastries wafted through the streets. A stage had been erected by the waterfront, where a folk band played cheerful, stomping music. I'd bought a new dress for the occasion. Nothing fancy, just a simple blue sundress that Vera had insisted brought out my eyes. I felt nervous, like I was going on a date rather than to a town festival. Maxim was waiting by the harbor, and when he saw me, he stopped mid-sentence in his conversation with Oleg, staring. You look, he started, then seemed to forget how to finish the sentence. Different when I'm not covered in dust and holding blue points? I supplied, trying to ignore the warmth spreading through me at his reaction. Beautiful, he said simply. You look beautiful. Oleg grinned and elbowed him. Finally found his tongue. I was worried for a second there. Shut up, Oleg, Maxim muttered, but he was smiling. He offered me his arm, and I took it, feeling the solid muscle under his cotton shirt. We walked through the festival together, stopping at food stalls, watching traditional dancers, laughing at children racing wooden boats in tide pools. Try this, Maxim said, offering me a piece of smoked fish from his plate. I took a bite, and it was delicious, smoky and sweet and melting on my tongue. That's amazing, right? Oleg wishes he could make it like this, but old Mrs. Petrova won't share her recipe. He took a bite himself, and I watched his lips, wondering what they would taste like. Smoked fish and salt water, probably. The thought made me shiver. Cold? He asked, immediately concerned. No, I'm fine. More than fine, actually. Standing here in the golden evening light with this complicated, wounded, wonderful man. Dance with me, he said suddenly. What? The band is playing. People are dancing. Dance with me, Anna. Before I could overthink it, he pulled me toward the makeshift dance floor where couples were spinning to a lively polka. His hand found my waist, the other clasping my hand, and we were moving, spinning, laughing as we tried to keep up with the fast pace. I wasn't a great dancer, neither was he. We stepped on each other's feet, nearly collided with other couples, and I'm pretty sure we were completely offbeat. But it didn't matter. Nothing mattered, except his hands on me, his eyes locked on mine, the joy bubbling up in my chest like champagne. The song ended and a slower one began. The other couple shifted, pulling closer. Maxim hesitated for just a second, then drew me against him, both arms around my waist. I looped mine around his neck. This is nice, I said softly. Yeah, it really is. We swayed together, barely moving, just holding each other as the music washed over us. I could feel his heartbeat against my chest, strong and steady. Could feel his breath stirring my hair.
The next 3 weeks were the happiest I could remember in years. We worked on the lighthouse during the day, professional, focused, making real progress. The foundation repairs were complete, the new stairs were being fabricated, and the museum space on the ground floor was beginning to take shape. But in the evenings, we were just Anna and Maxim. We'd have dinner at Oleg's cafe, walk along the beach, sit on the rocks watching the sunset. He taught me to read the weather in the clouds, the moods of the sea and the color of the waves. I showed him my sketches, explaining the vision I had for the finished lighthouse, how old and new could blend seamlessly, how every modern addition would honor the original structure. "You see it as a whole," he said one evening, studying my drawings spread across his kitchen table. "Not just a restoration project, but a living thing with past and future." "That's because it is alive," I said, leaning against his shoulder. "Buildings have souls if you pay attention." His cottage was small, but comfortable. Wood-paneled walls covered with nautical charts and old photographs, a stone fireplace, wide windows overlooking the sea. It felt more like home than my sleek Moscow apartment ever had. "Stay tonight," he said, his lips brushing my temple. "I'll make you breakfast. My pancakes are legendary." "Legendarily bad or legendarily good?" "You'll have to stay to find out." I did stay, and his pancakes were indeed legendary. Legendarily terrible. Burnt on the outside and raw in the middle. We laughed until we cried, then ordered food from Oleg and spent the rest of the morning in bed, learning the geography of each other's bodies, the map of scars and sensitive places. "Here," I traced a long white scar on his shoulder. "What's this from?" "Fishing line snapped in a storm. Caught me like a whip. Needed 17 stitches." He kissed the small scar on my wrist. "And this?" "Fell off my bike when I was 8. My father carried me to the hospital on his shoulders, telling me jokes the whole way so I wouldn't cry." We traded stories written on skin. Every mark, a memory. Every memory, a piece of who we'd become. But underneath the happiness, worry gnawed at me. This was temporary. I had a life in Moscow, an apartment, clients, a career. The lighthouse project would end eventually. And then what? Could this thing between us survive distance? Did we even want to try? Or was this just a beautiful interlude, a healing space before we returned to our real lives? I didn't ask. Neither did he. We lived in the perfect present, not daring to look too far ahead. The call came on a Tuesday morning. I was at the lighthouse, photographing the progress for the permit office, when my phone rang. Moscow number. My boss, Sergey. "Anna, where have you been? I've been trying to reach you for days." "Sorry, Sergey. The signal here is spotty and I've been buried in work." "Listen, something big has come up. Remember the Volkov Center project? The luxury hotel and conference center we pitched last year?" My heart started beating faster. The Volkov Center was the project. $100 million development in the heart of Moscow. Every architect in the city had competed for it. "They've chosen us, Anna. We won the contract. But there's a catch. They want you as lead architect. You specifically. They loved your portfolio, especially the Kuznetsky Bridge renovation." I sat down heavily on a wooden crate. "Sergey, that's incredible.
but I'm in the middle of... I know, the lighthouse thing. But Anna, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. This project could make your career. You'd be set for years after this. Any firm in Russia would want you after this. How soon would they need me? They want to start immediately. Preliminary meetings next week. Full design phase starting in a month. It's a 2-year project minimum. 2 years. In Moscow. The dream I'd worked toward my entire career. Finally within reach. Can I think about it? Of course, but not for too long. They have other architects on standby. I need an answer by Friday, Anna. 3 days. After he hung up, I sat there staring at the phone, feeling like the ground had shifted beneath me. Everything okay? Maxim's voice came from behind me. He'd been working on the exterior brickwork, his shirt off, sun-bronzed skin gleaming with sweat. Yeah, no, I don't know. That was my boss in Moscow. They offered me a huge project, the biggest of my career. Something shuddered in his expression. That's great. Congratulations. Maxim. No, really. That's what you do, right? Big projects, important buildings. This lighthouse is just a small job for you. That's not fair. I stung at the sudden coldness in his voice. This lighthouse matters to me. You know it does. But not enough to turn down your real life for it. He pulled his shirt on roughly. I get it, Anna. I always knew you'd leave eventually. Moscow architects don't belong in places like Seaside. Don't do this, I said, anger rising to match his. Don't make me the villain because I have ambitions beyond this town. I'm not making you anything. I'm just acknowledging reality. He started gathering his tools. You should take the job. It's what you came here to escape to, isn't it? Your career, your real life. You're my real life too. The words burst out before I could stop them. These last weeks, they've been real, Maxim. What we have is real. Is it? Or is it just a nice distraction while you hide from your problems? A seaside romance before you go back to your real world? That's not... But was it? Had I been using this place as a temporary shelter? I don't know. I admit it quietly. I don't know what this is yet. It's too new, too fragile. But I know I don't want to lose it. You can't have both, Anna. You can't have Moscow and Seaside, your career and this. He gestured between us. Eventually, you have to choose. Why? Why can't I try to find a way to have both? Because I've tried that already. Tried to be in 2 places at once. Captain a ship while worrying about my family on shore. And it got my brother killed. His voice cracked. I can't do halfway, Anna. I can't build something with someone who has 1 foot out the door. So what are you saying? That unless I turn down the job, we're done? That's an ultimatum, Maxim. No. It's self-preservation. He picked up his toolbox. Take the job. Go to Moscow. Be the successful architect you're meant to be. I'll finish the lighthouse myself. Maxim, please. But he was already walking away, down the hill toward his truck, leaving me standing in the shadow of the lighthouse we'd built together. I didn't see him for 2 days. He didn't come to the lighthouse, didn't answer my calls. Oleg told me he was working through some things and to give him time. Vera was more direct. That boy is an idiot, running away the moment things get complicated, just like his father did. It's not that simple, I said miserably. He's right in a way. I can't be in 2 places at once, and I can't ask him to wait for me while I build my career in Moscow. That's not fair either. Who says you have to be in Moscow? You're an architect. You can work anywhere. Not on a project this big. I'd need to be there on site, meeting with clients and contractors daily. For 2 years? Yes. And then what? Another big project? And another. Vera looked at me shrewdly. When does it end, Anna? When is your career successful enough that you can have a life too? I didn't have an answer. That night, I walked to the lighthouse alone. The moon was full, painting everything in silver light. I climbed to the lantern room and sat there, looking out at the sea that Maxim loved, the town that had become unexpectedly dear to me. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. Anna, it's Igor. I heard you're in Seaside. We need to talk. I'm driving up tomorrow. Please don't shut me out. I stared at the message in disbelief. Igor? Coming here? After everything? Before I could process this, another message, this time from my mother. Darling, Igor called me.
Igor arrived at noon the next day, driving a gleaming Mercedes that looked absurdly out of place in Seaside's modest streets. I watched from the inn's window as he parked and stepped out, immaculate in pressed chinos and a designer polo shirt, checking his reflection in the car window. "Want me to send him away?" Vera asked, appearing beside me with a rolling pin in hand. "I can be very persuasive." Despite everything, I smiled. "No, I should handle this myself. But stay close, just in case. I'll be in the kitchen with this." She hefted the rolling pin meaningfully. I met Igor on the front porch, deliberately not inviting him inside. He smiled, that practiced, charming smile that once made my heart flutter and now just made me tired. "Anna, you look wonderful. The sea air agrees with you." He moved to hug me, but I stepped back. "What are you doing here, Igor?" His smile faltered. "I came to apologize, to explain. Can we talk? Maybe take a walk." "We can talk here. You have 5 minutes." He glanced around at the modest inn, the fishing boats in the harbor, the simple wooden houses. I could see the calculation in his eyes, the dismissal. This place was beneath him, therefore I must be desperate. Therefore he still had a chance. "I made a terrible mistake," he began, using the sincere voice he reserved for juries. "The thing with Alina, it meant nothing. A moment of weakness, stress about the wedding. I never meant to hurt you." "You didn't mean to hurt me, or you didn't mean to get caught?" "There's a difference, Igor." "Does it matter? I'm here now, aren't I? Asking for forgiveness, asking you to come home." "Home? I don't have a home in Moscow with you. I never did. I had a place where I was tolerated, where my career was forgiven, and where I was supposed to be grateful you chose me despite my flaws." He had the grace to look uncomfortable. "I never said." "You didn't have to. It was in every comment about my late nights at the office, every time you scheduled something without checking my calendar first, every joke about my age or my priorities." I felt years of swallowed resentment rising. "You didn't want a partner, Igor. You wanted an accessory. Someone who looked good at your firm's parties and didn't ask for too much attention." "That's not fair." His voice hardened. "I supported your career. You tolerated it. When it was convenient, when it didn't interfere with your plans." I took a deep breath. "But this isn't about rehashing old arguments. You want to know if I forgive you? Fine. I forgive you. Not for your sake, but for mine. Because I don't want to carry anger anymore. But forgiving you doesn't mean taking you back. That part of my life is over." "Is it because of him?" Igor's eyes narrowed.
Your mother mentioned you've been spending time with some local, a fisherman or something. Come on, Anna. You're too smart to throw away your future for a seaside fling. Don't. My voice came out as sharp as ice. Don't you dare talk about him. He's worth 10 of you. And this isn't about him. It's about me finally understanding what I deserve, which is so much more than you ever gave me. Anna, go home, Igor. Find someone who wants what you're offering, but it's not me. Not anymore. Not ever again. For a moment, he just stared at me, and I saw the exact second he realized I meant it. That his charm, his apologies, his assumption that I'd be grateful for another chance, none of it would work. You'll regret this, he said coldly. When you're stuck in this nowhere town with your nowhere boyfriend, working on pathetic little projects, you'll remember what you gave up. Maybe. Or maybe I'll look back and wonder why it took me so long to leave. I turned toward the door. Goodbye, Igor. I heard about the Volkov Center project, he called out, making me pause. Sergei told me they want you. That's my father's company, Anna. One word from me, and that offer disappears. I turned back slowly. Are you actually threatening me right now? I'm stating facts. Take me back, and the job is yours. Reject me, and I'll make sure you never work on a major project in Moscow again. For a second, just a second, fear gripped me. He could do it. His family had connections, influence. He could blackball me, destroy my reputation with whispered words in the right ears. Then I looked at him, really looked at him, and saw a small, petty man who could only feel powerful by making others feel weak. And I laughed. Do it, I said. Tank my career, destroy my reputation. I don't care anymore. Because you know what I learned in this nowhere town? That there are more important things than impressing people like you and your father. Like doing work I love with people I respect. Like building something that matters, not just something expensive. You're making a mistake. The only mistake I made was wasting 3 years on you. Now get out of my town. Your town? He sneered. You've been here what, a month? You don't belong here any more than I do. You're a Moscow architect, Anna. This rustic fantasy will get old, and when it does, you'll have nothing left. Then I'll have nothing, but at least I'll have myself. I walked to the door and opened it. Leave, Igor, and don't contact me again. He stood there a moment longer, jaw clenched, then stalked to his car without another word. I watched him drive away, tires spitting gravel, and felt a massive weight lift from my shoulders. Vera emerged from the kitchen, rolling pins still in hand. You did good, dear. I really did, didn't I? I can't believe I was ever going to marry him. We all have our blind spots. She hugged me. Now, go find Maxim and tell him what happened. He's been pacing around his house all morning like a caged bear. I found Maxim at the lighthouse, working on the museum displays. He looked up when I entered, hope and worry warring on his face. How did it go? I sent him packing, told him exactly what I thought of him and his threats. Threats? Maxim's whole body tensed. What kind of threats? I explained about the Volkov Center, Igor's father, the attempt at blackmail. So I might have just torpedoed my career. But honestly, it felt amazing. Anna, you can't give up an opportunity like that because of me, because of us. I didn't give it up because of you. I gave it up because of me. I pulled back to look at him. I'm tired of letting other people define my worth, Maxim. Igor, my mother, even Sergei. with his opportunity of a lifetime. They all want me to be someone I'm not sure I want to be anymore. What do you want to be? I don't know yet, but I know I want to finish this project. Not because I have to, but because I love it. Because every brick we restore, every beam we save, it matters. It tells a story, and I want to be part of that story. He cupped my face in his hands. Are you sure? Because once you turn down that job, there's no going back. I know, and I'm terrified. But I'm also excited, which I haven't been about work in years. I covered his hands with mine. Help me be brave? Always. We kissed deep and desperate and full of promise. When we broke apart, I pulled out my phone and dialed Sergey before I could second guess myself. Anna, please tell me you're calling with good news. I am, actually. Just not the news you want. I took a deep breath. I'm turning down the Volkov Center project. Silence. Then, you're what? Anna, do you understand what you're... I do. And I've made my decision. Thank you for the opportunity, but it's not right for me. Is this about Igor? Because he called me, said he might have interfered. This is about me, Sergey. About what I want my career to look like. And right now, that's not a 2-year project in Moscow. I'm sorry. Another pause. You're really short about this. I am. He sighed heavily. You're one of the best architects I've ever worked with, Anna. But you're also one of the most stubborn. If this is what you want, I respect that. The door is always open if you change your mind. Thank you. That means a lot. After I hung up, I stood there trembling slightly, adrenaline and relief flooding through me.
The next week was a blur of documents, emails, and sleepless nights. Anna requested full financial reports from every project she had ever overseen, pulled old contracts from archives, and asked previous clients for written statements about her work. The more she dug, the calmer she became. Her records were meticulous. Every invoice matched. Every cost was justified. One evening, she sat at the inn's kitchen table surrounded by neat piles of paper. Vera poured her tea and watched. You know, sometimes life does us a favor in a very ugly wrapping. Losing my career is a favor? Anna asked tiredly. Losing illusions is a favor, Vera corrected. Men like Igor build their power on fear. The moment you stop being afraid of them, they lose most of it. Anna stared at the papers. What if I'm not meant to go back to that world at all? Then don't, Vera said simply. You're not a tree. You can move. There is plenty of work in this world that needs clever hands and a brave heart. Cities aren't the only places where buildings needing saving. The words lodged in Anna's chest and stayed there. The next day, she sent a long, organized package to the licensing board and to Maria Volkov, scanned contracts, payment schedules, spreadsheets, and 4 character references from past clients. She did not beg, she did not apologize. She simply told the truth and attached proof. At the end of the email to Maria, she added, if, after reviewing these documents, you still believe your son's story, I cannot help you, but I suggest you look closely at who has the most to gain from discrediting me. Then she shut the laptop, exhaled, and went up to the lighthouse. Maxim was on the scaffolding, restoring the brickwork. He looked down, hesitation written all over his face, as if uncertain whether he was welcome. Are you avoiding me? Anna called. I thought you might want space, he said. I want you, I answered. Space is optional. His relief was almost visible. He climbed down, dust streaked his forearms and cheek. How did it go? He asked. I've done everything I can. Now I wait. And in the meantime, we have a lighthouse to finish. Something shifted between them in that moment.
Not the rush of new passion, but something steadier. A sense of choosing each other not because life was easy, but precisely because it wasn't. They worked into the evening, side by side. When they finally switched off the work lights and stepped outside, the sky was streaked pink and gold. Below, the town glowed softly. Above, the old lantern sat silent, waiting. "You know," Anna said, "what we're doing here is what I always dreamed of. I just never knew it. I thought success meant glass towers and glossy magazines. But this, bringing an old building back to life, watching a town gather around it, that feels like success." Maxim glanced at her. "Are you saying you're staying?" "I'm saying," I answered carefully, "that if I'm starting from zero anyway, I get to decide what starting looks like. And maybe that's a small office in Seaside, specializing in restoration, coastal architecture, heritage buildings." "You'd move here permanently?" "Not this second. I still need to see how the investigation plays out. But I'm done living a life that doesn't feel like mine. So, yes, I'm considering basing my work here, traveling for projects when needed, and coming home here." "Home," he repeated softly. "With you," I added, because it was time to say it plainly. He took her hand, brought it to his lips, and kissed her knuckles. "Then I'll do whatever it takes to deserve that. You already do." They stood together on the slope below the lighthouse, and for the first time when Anna thought of the future, she did not see a single point on a map. She saw a whole coastline. 2 weeks later, an email arrived from the licensing board. Anna opened it with trembling hands while Maxim, Vera, and Oleg waited at the inn's table, pretending not to watch. Her eyes scanned the message. Her shoulders dropped. Then she laughed, half sob, half disbelief. "Well," Maxim demanded. "I'm cleared," she said, voice shaking. "No evidence of misconduct. They're closing the matter. They actually apologized for the stress." "And Volkov?" Vera asked. "As for Mr. Volkov, we have advised his family that making false allegations about licensed professionals may have legal consequences. They have withdrawn all claims." Oleg whooped. Vera wiped her eyes with the corner of her apron. Maxim just pulled Anna off her chair into a fierce hug. "You did it," he murmured. "We did it," she corrected into his shoulder. "You held me together when I was ready to fall apart." "Is it wrong that I'm a little disappointed?" Oleg said. "I was hoping we'd get to egg his car." "We can egg the metaphorical car by living well." That night, the whole town climbed the hill to the lighthouse for the official reopening and first lighting. Children ran ahead with paper lanterns, old sailors leaned on canes, teenagers clustered in excited knots. Inside, the ground floor had transformed into a small but thoughtful museum. Old logbooks under glass, black and white photographs of keepers and storms, a display dedicated to Dennis, a framed photo, a short text about his life, and a brass plaque that read, "For those who guide us home, even when they are gone." Maxim stopped in front of it and went very still. "Did you—" he began. "Vera gave me the photo," Anna said quietly. "I wrote the text, but if you don't like it—" "It's perfect," he said, voice rough. He would have loved this. They climbed the restored stairs with the townspeople, up and up to the lantern room. The lens gleamed, prisms polished to a high shine, the mechanism restored and ready. Electric components had been discreetly integrated, hidden where they wouldn't spoil the historical feel. The mayor made a small speech, but Anna barely heard it. She was watching Maxim, his straight shoulders, his steady hands on the control panel. "Ready?" he whispered to her. More than ready. Their fingers intertwined on the switch. Together, they pushed it. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then the lens stirred, turned, and a powerful beam of light surged out over the sea. The crowd gasped. Children cheered. Someone started to clap. Then everyone was clapping. Anna's eyes stung. Maxim's hand tightened around hers. "Look at her," he murmured. "She's alive again." She never stopped being alive. She was just waiting for someone to listen. People milled around them, embracing, talking excitedly about how the lighthouse would become a symbol of the town, a draw for tourists, a point of pride. Someone asked Anna if she'd consider looking at the old pier for a possible renovation. Another mentioned a crumbling warehouse that could be turned into an art space. Her new life was materializing as the beam swept across the waves. Later, long after most people had gone down the hill, Anna and Maxim stayed in the lantern room, watching the light rotate out into the night. Below them, seaside glittered. Before them, the sea stretched endless and dark, punctuated now by their beacon. "So," Maxim said, "have you thought any more about that office?" "I have a name picked out. North Star Restoration, Coastal and Heritage Architecture." "North Star," he echoed. "I like it. It fits, doesn't it? Guiding people safely, helping them find their way back to what matters." "Where will this office be?" I smiled. "I was thinking the second floor above Oleg's cafe, if the landlord ever fixes the roof." "Oleg will fix the roof himself if it means more pretty architects loitering around his kitchen." Maxim snorted. "You really mean it? You're staying?" "Yes," I said simply. "I'll still travel for projects, if they're right. Maybe even work in Moscow sometimes on my own terms. But this is home base. This town, this lighthouse, this ridiculously stubborn man who thinks he can save the whole world with one beam of light. I can't save the whole world." He turned to face her. "But I can do my damnedest best to take care of the part of it that includes you. That's all I want." He kissed her then, slow and certain, with none of the hesitation of their first kisses. This was not escape or distraction anymore. It was an answer, a choice. Outside, the lighthouse continued its steady rotation, light into darkness, darkness into light.